Welcome to Peculiar Tales. I'm your host, KMS. Arachnophobes beware, for this tale I've pulled off the shelf features your favorite eight-legged creatures. But I do hope you still tune in, as you may want to hear what this tale tells. The web of a spider is unsettling, to say the least. Perhaps even frightening, especially when it's on you. The sensation of a web clinging to your skin is not an experience I believe anyone to enjoy. Even though the feeling of those sticky strands of gossamer is utterly unnerving, here is why it's best not to panic upon being caught in one. This is Caught in a Web. I'm a lover of nature, hiking, walks in the woods, any excuse to get outside, I'll take it. So it was no surprise to me when my nightly dreams began to consist of these walks in the woods as well. At first these dreams lacked any direction, meaning they were simply myself walking through the woods, peaceful, serene, enjoyable. They mirrored my walks in the forest while awake, as I never truly had any goal in mind but that of basking in the natural world. They mirrored my walks in the forest while awake, as I never truly had any goal in mind but that of basking in the natural world and taking in the sights of a dense forest. The forest seemed to be unending. As far as I could see were more and more trunks of ancient trees and green leaves. Hints of yellows, reds, and oranges on their tips as the season changed from summer into fall. I would take in a deep breath, a dampness in the air intermixed with an overabundance of oxygen from all the greenery, sigh contentedly, and continue forth. The dream repeated this way for many nights, but I soon found out that this was just the beginning of something the exact opposite of what it seemed, a terrifying nightmare. Now, I am equally a lover of insects as I am of nature. Well, or at least respect them as much. I can't say that I've ever been afraid of spiders like so many others are. I'm more afraid of mosquitoes and ticks. Insects that actively seek you out with the intent of harm. Spiders, well, they're hunters themselves, but as long as you stay away from their webs, as long as you yourself do not seek them out, they have no reason to harm you. Although I'm not plagued with arachnophobia, I've discovered I am plagued with the fear of spider webs. Oftentimes on my real jaunts into nature, I regrettably run into a web. The sensation of the sticky threads clinging to my body sends shivers through my very being, followed soon after by an irrational panic to remove said webbing. The way it continues to cling from one spot to another, seemingly impossible to remove until it breaks with a strange, soft, but disgusting elastic snap, makes it far more unbearable. Though I'm not afraid of the spider itself, the rush of panic, this overwhelming urgency to remove the strange encasement from my body, heightens my anxiety enough that my senses become more powerful, and feeling a spider's legs against my skin or pushing aside my hair as it moves through it sends me over the edge. Considering how many times this has occurred, it would seem I'd be over this fear by now. But no. I tend to forget or at least become oblivious to it for a time until I become careless and it happens again, reminding me of why I was so cautious in the first place. Well, this fear seemed to make its way into my once serene dream. Upon taking in the familiar deep breath of air, sighing and moving forward, the dream now continued. Everything seemed fine at first, but I soon found myself running into a spider's web. In the dream, though, rather than breaking through the web, I got caught in it. Its strands were still soft and silken, but thick. Their stickiness far increased and as strong as a fishing line, perhaps even more so. I struggled and struggled to get the disgusting, clinging, tickling, unnerving material off of me, but to no avail. I would struggle for some time, and then, as I continued, would feel two legs of the spider rest against my shoulders. I would try to turn my head to see it, but the webs would prevent me. Then I'd let out a gasp as its fangs sunk into my neck and then grew still as its poisons rushed through my veins. My entire body would sting from inside out at first, but then go numb as it melted. After everything had gone numb, I'd see myself from outside of my body, a shriveled husk of what I once was, my eyes protruding out from the wrinkled skin on my face and my mouth agape as if screaming, but I was already gone. It was not many nights after that an additional detail was added to the dream. It was a voice, or more of a transmission of thought, a whisper, but only audible in the mind itself. It would tell me not to struggle, to stay calm, to not make things worse. At first I thought this voice was my thoughts, my conscious, but the issue was that it didn't sound like me, feel like me. It seemed external, though it was internal. It was only myself and the spider there, and spiders can't speak, unless they can in dreams. Anyways, like most dreams, even the repetitive ones, I'd only think about it for a short time after I awoke in the morning, and then upon getting busy with life's daily tasks, it would soon disappear from my mind entirely. One morning, after it was already long gone from my thoughts, I looked outside to a misty world, the skies overcast with light gray clouds, enough to keep the day from warming up and to hold in the fog, but not enough for rain. Though it was already mid-morning, it seemed much earlier because of the weather, and perhaps because the sun was starting to come up later as well. I decided it was the perfect weather for one of my strolls through the woods and headed out to one of my favorite areas just for that. Being a weekday, there were a few cars parked at the trailhead, just as I liked it. I started making my way down the trail, the dirt beneath my shoes somewhat wet from the mist, now dissipating, and water beads that had collected upon the undergrowth glinting in the dim glow of the cloud-blocked sun. I was pleasantly surprised by the change from pure green to other shades in the leaves and undergrowth, some vivid reds, some bright yellows, and deep oranges. I stopped on occasion simply to admire the beautiful colors and take in the cool, moist morning air. It was a damp hold held in by the confines of the forest, one that made me shudder. My ears were filled with the usual forest sounds, crickets, bird calls, woodpeckers, and the scurrying and chatter of squirrels and chipmunks. I was surprised to hear what seemed like the call of a man as I made my way further down the trail, but it was muffled, distant. I didn't think much of it at the time, probably calling to a fellow hiking companion, whether they be human or canine. As I got closer and the calls continued, though, I began to notice an urgency, a panic, a deep fear in the tone of these calls. But they were still too muffled to comprehend. I quickened my pace down the trail, and this turned into a run. I continued forth. The screams stopped, but I could still hear a gasping and whimpering, which I followed. Barreling through the forest, my eyes quickly darted from in front of me to make sure I didn't run into any trees or low-hanging branches, to my feet to make sure I didn't trip over any rocks or roots. I was getting close and my eyes darted down again to make sure I was on a clear, steady path, but when I looked up, before me was a massive spiderweb, visible from all of the dew which clung to it. I was unable to stop myself in time and stumbled right into it. Just like in my dream, the web was sticky, soft, but the size and strength of fishing line. The only difference was the added shock of wetness from all the dew. At first, I was too caught up in my struggles to remove myself from the seemingly unbreakable entrapment to notice the other man, the one who had been emitting the screams, in the webbing before me, slightly off to the left. As I moved my eyes to the side, our visions met. His eyes were wide with terror that I could see within those glimmering bloodshot bulbs. "You have to get out. The spider is going to bite me. Please, save me, please. Get out of here and save me," he pleaded. I tried to shake my head to inform him I was unable, but was too trapped to even do that. I remained silent, in shock. He didn't speak again either, but instead began to struggle even more intensely than I had been. Suddenly, he let out a pain-filled gasp, the unseen spider having bitten him, and those eyes, which were seconds before intense with fear, lost all color as the life drained from them. With one final pointless struggle, his body went limp and hung in the web, occasionally spasming and swaying ever so slightly from those last remnants of a fight for life. I was still for a moment unsure of how to react, seeing such a sight before me, or what to do next, how not to end up with the same fate. My eyes were growing tired of staring to the left, so I returned my gaze forward, both to let them rest and because I thought I saw in the far corner of my vision a large, lengthy, and pointed black leg beginning to wrap its way around the dead man's waist. I applied a more methodical approach to my struggle for an escape, first starting with my arms, trying to maneuver them back and forth in hopes of breaking the strands of web and setting them free to aid in removing the rest of me. I was at this for quite some time, taking breaks when my arms would grow tired and starting again when the thought of the corpse to my left and the massive spider sucking out its liquid insides from behind returned. I was too concentrated to scream like he had, and considering I'd seen no one else, it seemed rather fruitless anyways. In a bout of exhaustion, I happened to glance to the left, and first saw the lifeless body of the unknown man. It was now grayish-white, his eyes bulging out of his head even further than when he was still alive, and the skin around his face sunken, revealing the structure of his cheekbones. My eyes traveled down from his face to his now loose-fitting jacket and further left to the bony hand protruding from its sleeve. I then let out an audible gasp as terror coursed through my very being, sending me into a frenzied struggle. Right outside of my field of view, I saw the spider, large, mostly black, but with a spiky, white and yellow back. All of it a shining, almost shimmery, slimy texture, and its many eyes a deep, dark red. Lastly, I saw its fangs moving out and then back in as if stretching them. Leg by leg, it slowly but easily made its way towards me, soon leaving my field of vision entirely as I continued to struggle. I wasn't getting anywhere. The webbing was too strong, too elastic, and too sticky. Soon I felt the sharp pinpoints of the end of the spider's legs digging into my shoulder and side. Unable to turn my head, all I could do was imagine what the thing looked like up close. Then I heard a voice, or rather, just like in my dreams, it seemed to come from inside of me, but it wasn't my own or even my thoughts.
Do not struggle. You'll only make things worse for yourself. Be still, be calm, and you will be free. Do not struggle. Be still, calm.
Every bit of my physical being wanted to ignore that strange voice, but my mental strength was able to overpower it. In my dreams, I always ignored it and suffered the consequences. When the man before me and to my side began to struggle again, that was when his life was lost. So I heeded the words and stilled myself, the only movement being my chest heaving in and out as fear-filled exhalations of air escaped me. I felt those pinpointed legs moving all about me and winced at each step, digging into my skin. Yet as it continued to move methodically along my body, my limbs began to feel less and less restricted than my body as a whole, and soon I was free. I stepped away from the web in a dazed state, not fully comprehending what had just happened. After stumbling forward a few feet, I turned around to see the massive spider, perhaps the size of a toddler, retreat up a tree and disappear into the leaves. With my arms and hands now free, I immediately grabbed my phone and called the police to notify them of the body and the web. I didn't mention the spider as it would be long gone by the time they arrived, and I guess, in a way, it was to return the favor for it freeing me. I figured a hunt would be set up for the creature, and this would buy it time until they determined the cause of death for the man was a spider the size of which humankind has never seen before. From what I know, they never did find the spider, mostly for the fact that many refused to believe a spider so big was even possible. Instead, the official claim was that the two massive injection points were actually two concentrated spots where the man had been bitten many times over by multiple spiders that just so happened to turn out looking like two large fang marks. The amount of their toxins mixed with the shock and pain from all of the bites were what supposedly caused his demise. All I know is that if you ever find yourself caught in a web, whether it be as big as this one, which I hope you never do have to experience, or smaller, more normal, don't panic. You may find yourself being bitten if you do. Take things calmly. Let the spider take its leave or help it off of you instead. As for the voice, well, I believe that was the spider's. That was Caught in a Web, and this is Peculiar Tales. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, please consider hitting the subscribe button below, leaving a like, a comment, and lastly, clicking the bell to be notified when the next Peculiar Tale in my collection is released. If you'd like to download this tale and others, click the Bandcamp link in the description below. It's free to download, but donations are greatly appreciated. You can also donate directly to the podcast through the PayPal link also found in the description below. Thank you for joining me. I hope to see you next time.